The Joe Rogan Experience.
And that was right after Epstein had first walked into Bill Clinton's life. That was between White House visit number 1 and White House visit number 2, while Epstein was funding the refurbishing of the entire West Wing of the White House.
I'm glad you brought up Epstein, because there was a point that I was going to make earlier that I forgot. The Epstein situation is identical to the Manson situation.
You think so? Explain what you mean.
This is why.
I mean, I think you don't mean that literally. I think you mean that in a more metaphorical way,
the
right?
structure. The structure of how you would pull, like if you were going to use an intelligence asset to do something evil, to do something where you can get dirt on people or compromise people or accomplish an objective, you would get someone who's already fucked up.
Oh, 100%.
And then you get that fucked up person and you help them, run this cult, or you help them get girls.
But you intentionally keep them separate.
Yeah.
You're not hiring them. They don't work for you.
Right.
They're a private entity.
It's
like layers of obfuscation.
Like if he wasn't personally a pervert, it wouldn't work.
Oh, not a chance. No.
Like think about, like the guy gets arrested for having sex with underage girls or getting them to do happy endings or wherever he did. So he gets arrested, and then the real weird thing is that he just gets out and gets like house arrest.
Yep.
And he gets like a little slap on the wrist, and then he's back in action with all these rich people again.
Yep.
Like really rich, influential people. Like Bill Gates is hanging out with him after he's already been arrested and convicted. Like that's bananas.
Yep. But to your point about them...
But he's got to already be fucked up. He can't be
100%.
like a straight edge, regular guy with a family and children that is just evil. No, you got to have him in on the thing. So if you got a guy you know is already a freak, you know he's already a nut, and he's already like doing
That's how you recruit him.
blow and fucking hookers all the time, and maybe he's been caught with a few underage girls.
Well, when you study where he came from and how he got plucked from the Dalton School and then got put into Bear Stearns and then got put through Bear Stearns and then got put into money management, like
it was teaching at one point in time.
It was teaching at the Dalton School, and then he was a banker at Bear Stearns, which he conveniently left when this big scandal broke that implicated him and the director Goldstein that had hired him and had been helping him up. And then he left and kind of took the fall and took the dirt with him. And then he went into the arms running businesses, which is where he met Maxwell. Daddy Maxwell, not daughter Maxwell, and Anand Khashoggi and Lease and all these other arms traffickers. And that's where he got into those. So it's like you walk slowly into these worlds. And as they're doing that, I'm imagining they're taking tabs on of like, what kind of guy is this and what's he into? And he's working with arms traffickers. And some of those arms traffickers were famous for blackmail. Like Anand Khashoggi, he was famous for having his yacht filled up with cameras and giving his arms deals everything they could ever want while he's selling weapons to them, and he's got his whole yacht wired up with cameras. Trump later bought that yacht, which is super interesting.
Whoa.
Do you know about that?
No.
So Trump, check this out. And I'm not claiming that Trump is in on everything. It's a very complex thing here, but Trump's history is pretty weird. He bought the Plaza Hotel, which is where the Blue Suite parties that blackmailed J. Edgar Hoover happened. You remember? Do you know about those?
No. What year was that?
Oh, dude. So J. Edgar Hoover, the founder of the FBI, this is where I thought I was starting this fucking job to talk about GameStop and to talk about like the financial markets and shit. And then I realized how important intelligence agencies and organized crime are to how the world works. And I just got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into like,
I don't want to
what's the
miss out on
history?
some of the Epstein stuff.
Oh,
Should we come back to that?
Well, we'll get there. This is all connected.
Oh, it's all connected. Okay.
I could talk about the Epstein stuff for fucking days and start all kinds of trouble for your podcast and shit. But,
well, I think that trouble's supposed to be coming out publicly.
I don't think it's gonna.
Wasn't there? So the FBI in New York guy had to step down, right?
Yeah.
They were saying they're withholding files.
Yeah.
So the Pam Bondi's office said that they just got thousands of files.
Allegedly. Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I've been saying that I'm like Charlie Brown with Lucy in the football.
Yeah.
You know, when she pulls the football away every time he thinks he's going to get to kick it, and he goes falling on his ass.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
You haven't read Whitney Webb's books, have you?
No.
You really should.
I've watched a lot of her stuff online, though.
So the thing about her stuff online is that she comes off as way more unhinged because now she's very smart. She's very smart and she's on it.
Clearly.
But she's now very concerned, rightly so, about the sort of technocratic nature of what might be to come. But her research on Jeffrey Epstein is looking backwards at the history of organized crime, the history of Epstein, and it paints a very, we know very well who he worked for, and we know who he was associated with. She has primary sources with pages of sources cited about who put him where, who he interacted with, who said what about him, who claimed what about his life. And it's 2 full books, and it's very well sourced with primary sources cited all the way throughout. And so it's we don't actually really need the Epstein files to know what was going on. They'll hopefully include a lot of new details, but
don't we need it for rock solid proof? Don't we need the
So take Leslie Wexner that we were talking about earlier. No, we already have the flight logs.
Do we have all of them?
Unredacted. All
really?
Of them. Yeah.
All of them. So
theoretically, the ones we know of.
And do we have flight logs with destinations?
Yeah.
So we know. So we know who went to the island.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all there, and you can read them online. They're on archive.org, as well as other places. But Leslie Wexner is a great example here. Leslie Wexner owns Victoria's Secret and L Brands, right? He's the bank that bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein. And I was saying earlier that he signed the power of attorney over to Jeffrey Epstein so that Jeffrey Epstein was able to sell his assets, manage his assets, buy on his behalf. He could sell Victoria's Secret without Leslie Wexner in the room or even his knowledge if he wanted to, because that's the level of power of attorney that he signed over to Jeffrey Epstein when he was his money manager. And the reason why you do that is so that you can claim that you don't know about his operation. He was just my money manager. I didn't know he was running this thing because I wasn't involved in any of those transactions. But what that meant is that Leslie Wexner damn well knew. There's a whole, we could go into the mega group and we could go into his connections to Charles Bronfman, all these other things.
But I was saying about the Victoria's Secrets, if you're a pedophile, you want to work with kids, a Nickelodeon. If you're a freak, what do? You get in the underwear
That's how
business.
they were recruiting, is they were recruiting from the Victoria's Secret modeling, and Jeffrey Epstein was claiming that he was a rep. But do you know about the CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch that went down for running a sex trafficking ring?
Yeah.
He was Leslie Wexner's guy. When Leslie Wexner, he bought Abercrombie & Fitch in 1990, maybe 91, 89. And then one of the first things he did was he put that dude into position as CEO. That was Leslie Wexner's dude. And he becomes the CEO, and he's gay, and he likes really hot young male models. And he started running a male sex trafficking ring out of Abercrombie & Fitch. So Leslie Wexner, this dude who is a self-proclaimed possessed by a demon.
What?
Yeah. Whitney has a whole chapter where she goes into this article that was done by a mainstream news source 10, 20 years ago, where they're interviewing Leslie Wexner and asking him about how he came to power and what's his secret. It's called his D-book, D-Y-B-U-K, and you can read about this on Wikipedia as well. And he describes in his own words that he's possessed by a D-book, which is like a Yiddish word for an evil demon that drives him for more and more and more and more. This is in his own words.
Is he being hyperbolic? Is
A
he
little
joking
bit.
around?
No.
I'm possessed by a demon that just wants more and more. I just want to be successful.
No, I mean, I wasn't in the room, but I assume based upon the wording and how it's put,
Let's find it. I want to read that.
It's like a billionaire. I mean, it's in the text. It's directly quoted in the text in One Nation Under Blackmail, actually, which is in that backpack.
One Nation Under Blackmail?
One Nation Under
Is that
Blackmail by
Whitney's
Whitney
book?
Webb. Highly recommend, but it's super dense. It's a hard read. I've read it 3 times now, and I still am taking notes and trying to look things up to understand it because she's just so researched. And it's things like this where she's gone back to the original article where they were interviewing him, and he's just like a CEO. So they're just asking him, what's your secret to success? And he's like, I'm possessed by I have a drive for more. And he chose the word D-book, which is a Yiddish word.
So this is from New York Magazine interview.
That's exactly the source.
He says, and now perhaps it's time to reintroduce Leslie Wexner's D-book, the demon that always wakes up in the morning with Wexner and tweaks and pulls at him. When he was a boy, his father called it tummel, a churning. So he feels molten and unformed, pricked by these spiritual pins and needles. He met this demon again when he was 40 and already worth $500 million. When he climbed the mountain in front of the house in Vale and almost froze to death and decided to change his life. This demon he calls terminal
Schvilkes,
which makes him wander from house to house, repeating the pattern of his childhood on a luxurious scale, wanting more, swallowing companies larger than his own. It is precisely the reason that Wexner has $1 billion and doesn't stop at, say, $5 million and a new Mercedes every other year, and what he calls normal life. Bridge on Wednesdays and bar mitzvahs on Saturdays, and the Winding Hollow Country Club in Columbus, which is like Buckingham Palace to him when he was 15.
Yeah. So that's just to point out that, like, A, he's a fucking weird dude. He's a sketchy dude. He's running 2 sex trafficking rings out of his companies that he doesn't know anything about. And simultaneously, he founded, the Wexner Foundations and the Leslie Wexner Heritage Foundation. Those are also very interesting and controversial. They're very tied to Israel because he is one of the foremost Israeli philanthropists, despite being an American. But he founded what was called the Mega Group, which is it was not disclosed for a long time. It was secret. And it is a group of Jewish billionaires that get together on behalf of global Judaism, which is not uncommon. And there's nothing wrong with that if they're not committing crimes. But they would get together and meet. And it's people like Leslie Wexner, Charles Bronfman. The list is, we could look it up. And that group, it is unclear if we have proof that they were conducting espionage, but there are all of them have ties to organized crime through various elements. Like the Bronfmans were rum runners, as one example, that were then involved in the mob. Leslie Wexner is involved in these trafficking rings, etc. And that group seems to have been directly associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And she's one that she shows all the primary sources and like lays it all out of, this is what we know, and this is where the source came from, and this is what it said, and these are possible explanations for it. Here's 1 or 2 or 3 explanations of what it might be, but we don't really know because this is as far as the evidence goes. And so Leslie Wexner is just one where there's all this swirling evidence all around him that in order for him to not be aware of what's going on and to not have been an active part of this is damn near unbelievable in my eyes, allegedly. But I'm sure glad it's him and not Jeffrey Epstein, who was deeply interested in all these same technologies. This is a whole other side of him that no one talks about, is his interest in technologists and geneticists and all those things, right?
Yeah, well, he had a lot of influence over scientists. That's a creepy move to like take scientists and
throw
bring
parties for them, throw conventions for them. And a couple of them, a couple of them had some serious accusations, like Marvin Minsky, for example. But I bet a lot of them were not compromised. Like Stephen Hawking, everyone freaked out when Stephen Hawking was on the list. But it makes perfect sense as you realize that he was throwing conventions on that island for scientists specifically to bring them all together, because that way you get connections, you can get favors, even if you're not blackmailing them. Then they just want to be on your good side because you have all these connections and you can fund all their projects, and you become this integral part of this technological sort of space. That's
Blackmail's
so
not the only tool. That's a blunt instrument. There's a lot of just connections.
He also just hooked people up with wives. Like, do you know that he claimed that he introduced Melania to Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy one. I suspect, Melania conspiracy time, I suspect that Melania has been whispering in Trump's ear. I think she was trafficked before, either bad trafficked or good, or just like knew Epstein and like knew that world a little bit. But I suspect that she's been whispering in his ear about what that really is and does and all that things, because she's been kind of like acting from the back a lot. But when you really dig into what Melania's been doing, she's very, very active in anti-trafficking and in protecting trafficked victims and girls and stuff. And as Trump, when he married her, and then they have Barron, and he's watching his son grow up. So you have this young child, and you have this wife telling you about her previous life, probably, and just whispering in your ear that like, this could be your legacy. This could be your legacy. This could be your legacy, right? Because he used to be friends with those people, even though I don't think he was blackmailed, because I think that would have come out when the Democrats were going for him.
Right.
And maybe he was involved in the trafficking a little bit because of the things that he bought and the people that he knew and like Roy Cohn connections. But I don't even know about that. But regardless, he knows the game. And then he marries Melania. And then more and more, like, he was in charge when Epstein went down. He was the only one that when Epstein got arrested and they were going around asking for dirt, he was like, I'll fully fucking cooperate. Fuck that guy. I'll tell you everything that I know. And so I suspect that Melania has been instrumental in his sort of shift to being the only guy willing to go after those traffickers.
Out of all the information that's getting disclosed, supposedly this administration, what do you have the least faith that we're going to come to
Epstein,
a conclusion?
for sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I think that because when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel.
So
and I'm not saying it was all of Israel.
It was all an intelligence gathering and
it was targeting Americans. It was targeting American officials and the American president.
Right.
And the CIA does have interest in those targets too. Elements in the CIA does. Certainly they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized crime and intelligence operations. But you don't so for example, Dan Bongino, the new deputy director of the FBI, he recently had this clip that went all around where he said on camera that he had a source that he trusted deeply. And he's an informed guy. He was at a Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East. And I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so.